Hi there, and welcome to episode 17 of the ADHD Adult UK podcast. I'm James Brown, and sadly, and to the detriment of the podcast, I'm joined by the man whose head looks like that bit in Drop Dead Fred, where Drop Dead Fred was dragged through a fridge door, Dr. Alex Connor. Alex, hi.
Hi.
Is that it? I'm waiting for the follow-up.
Just being grown up. Hi.
I almost prefer you being a twat, to be honest. Almost. Anyway, I hate this bit. How are you, Al?
I'm very well, James. Thank you. Yes. Is that why you hate it to hear that I'm well?
Yes, you're always well. You never say I'm not. Actually, I've had a shit week. And I was delighted in that.
Yeah, I am very healthy and well. Thank you. All good. Yeah, this podcast is strangely going from strength to strength. Genuinely can't understand it. I think it's niche. There's not a lot of competition. We're getting a lot of lovely comments. I've been sent a letter, which I want to read out to you.
No, Right. So, two questions.
Mm-hmm.
Is the letter from somebody called Robert?
No.
Right. So, just as a kind of an associated question, is it from somebody from Kidderminster?
No.
Then go ahead.
Right, it's a Robert from Kidderminster, and they've asked, it says, do you know that James is planning to swindle your little charity and run away to just south of Coventry near Kenilworth? So, thanks for that. I've informed the Charity Commission. I've got a real letter. I love my letter. Can I read a real letter? Which is advice, actually, sort of. It says, I'm not saying it's from because idiosyncratic name, but we really like it. And it says, hi, I love your podcast. I recently got diagnosed, but I grew up in a redacted country, because that would be telling as well, where my therapist told me ADHD doesn't exist. And you know, it was so shocking. There's some really interesting information. We reply to everybody, so there's lots of other things we talk about. But then they've said very usefully, would you talk about how ADHD in women manifests differently sometimes? And I'm reading that because, yes, essentially it's on our list, and we're obviously, James and I are not brilliantly qualified to discuss the lived experience of women, but we can talk about the research and bring in a guest who is. So, yes, we're definitely going to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sending that in. Before we go any further, I just want to say that if you're not watching this on YouTube, and our podcast is available on YouTube, you won't be aware of the fact that specifically to annoy me, Alex, now we use a green screen, has put on the greenest shirt that he owns, so you can't see bits of his body, just to annoy me. And it's like it's the reason he's on this planet.
I'm a floating head.
You're a floating, perfectly spherical head, Alex. Anyway, moving on as usual. This shambolic podcast is a tragedy in 3 parts. We choose a theme. In the last episode, we talked about hyperfocus, and in this episode, we're talking about a really big term in the world of ADHD, and that's executive function, or more specifically, when it comes to ADHD, executive dysfunction. As usual, 3 parts, at least 2 of them are good, include evidence-based psychoeducation, some personal reflections on what executive dysfunction means to us, and we'll also, and I notice this keeps disappearing from the script, have time to play a game. I've watched James Forgotten, Lost or Mislaid this week, and in the final bit we'll give you some, we will always have time, Alex, I will make time. We will also then give you some top tips on executive function that we've been given or that we find works. So, Alex, you're not an executive and you have no function that I'm aware of. What's the big idea?
Thanks, James. So, executive functions are really big, as you've said, theme, and there's lots of elements within it which we're going to touch on. But we wanted to introduce the idea. We will, throughout the podcasts, talk about different elements of it in their entirety because they're very useful. In fact, our usual 11 listeners will know we've already done, for example, a working memory podcast, which is one of the elements of it. So let me start by asking a stupid question. Imagine, James, you pick a pencil up from your desk and move it into a drawer. Are you able to do that?
I haven't got a drawer near me, so no.
I mean, do you have the capacity?
I have the
Of course
capacity.
you do.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that you're looking for tricks. There's no trick. I mean, to move a thing from A to B, you have the capacity. Yes, you do. Now the question is, how did you do that?
I
What
didn't.
happened? Well, yeah, if you did it, what happened? Let's say you did it. What happened when you picked up a pen? The first thing that you did was that you decided inside your brain box that you would do that thing. You then told your arm to pick it up. You did it. Actions like this that aren't just a response to a stimulus like a jellyfish swimming towards food actually require some higher level thought. You know, humans need to go, oh, I want to do this thing. And why? Now, instead of a pen in a drawer, make it a big work project, something that requires the power of planning, timing stuff, holding some things in your very short-term memory, all things that a jellyfish simply doesn't have to think about. And these are the higher order brain functions, also you. These are higher order brain functions. It doesn't stop there. Now, what if there's a problem and you have to think flexibly? So you have to stop thinking about one thing to think about another. What about stopping thinking about something? How do we stop doing and thinking about stuff? All of these mental skills are called, as the umbrella term, executive function, and they are frankly crucial elements of humanity.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Alex, and say that you're going to say we can't do this, aren't you, as people with ADHD?
I am. Executive dysfunction. Obviously, we can do all of those things. We're not all jellyfish, James, but most ADHD people struggle with one, if not all, several certainly aspects of the executive function, this higher order functioning. And this can be and is usually a big part of the challenge of ADHD.
Yeah, the challenge is of ADHD. This feels, pardon me, this feels like a big subject, actually, almost as big as your head. And I think for us to really kind of drill down into it, in one episode, it would be difficult, but we probably lack the executive function to plan one episode properly to actually drill down into it, don't we?
When has the head thing been a big head? I thought it was like normal size, but entirely round.
I can change the way I insult your head at will because
I just think you don't remember what you're thinking.
No. I'm looking at it now. It's grotesque in many different ways, Alex. It's not just perfectly spherical. It's just offensive to mine eyes.
Massive. That's fair. So yes, you are right. We're going to give tips and do podcasts on the elements, and we already have started to. But it's so important. It's so important. I think that people feel empowered by terms like executive function. So you feel confident using it in your head, and when people say it and nobody feels stupid about that. So we have a reason rather than an excuse for some of the manifestations and behaviors that might appear strange when we live in a neurotypical world, which I do, James, and you nearly do, living in the West Midlands as you do.
It's amazing that you've actually built a career on public engagement and explaining complicated things to non-scientists. So give us some examples and stop using big words.
Okay, right. Why we're always too early or too late? Why a seemingly simple task can be baffling to us, or why something we've done before, like learning how to rock climb or organising a party or something that we love doing, is then for some reason impossible to do a second time, often due to a different emotional reward. It might seem boring a second time to our silly little brains, for example. It's not always clear why our higher order goes, oh, I can't do that now. Sometimes it's something we'll never be able to do, never have. Sometimes we've done it before. And all of these things, these planning issues, can be problematic in different parts of your life and in different environments, your work and home. And kind of that's arguably a major, major factor in ADHD.
I completely agree. Equally, I'm gonna go out on a limb because I can't remember, but I think inhibition, self-regulation, they're also executive functions, and that's if you think about the kind of the impulsivity that we have and the fact that we often can't stop ourselves from doing things. It just gives you an indication of those higher level functions, those executive functions that often we lack, and then how that becomes the behavior that you have. So it's one of the reasons we've talked about how shit the name ADHD is, and it's not a deficit of attention, etc. And because executive dysfunction is so almost universal, maybe even universal in ADHD. Alex and I have had,
arguably universal.
Alex and I have had personal conversations on the odd occasion where I've been forced to talk to him for an extended amount of time about how, if it were renamed, what we would call it. And we've talked about how trying to get executive dysfunction in there would probably capture better what the disorder is. So it's a massive part of ADHD.
It really is. Cognitive inhibition is a good one, James. What you're talking about, not doing things or stopping yourself doing things. It's estimated that it could be 50%, even 80% of children with Tourette's, which is not being able to inhibit yourself mentally, then go on to have ADHD later on. It's very linked. If you think about your impulsive behavior, when I really don't want to do this, then why don't you? Because your brain isn't able to turn stuff off, thinking about stuff, doing stuff. That's exactly right. Oh, that's too much psychoeducation for me. Can we take a break?
Well, it's just too much Alex for me. So we are going to take a break because I haven't got the executive function and control of my self-regulation to not offend you or insult you constantly. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back in part 2 for some personal reflections on how dysfunctional Alex is.
Welcome back to episode 17 of the ADHD Adult UK podcast, part 2. We are talking about some of our personal reflections of executive dysfunction problems. Now, James, how has executive dysfunction as an umbrella term affected you in your poor little life?
I'll give you one example, Alex. So in terms of the planning is an executive function. I forgot to plan to put the ticker across the screen to say this is episode 17. What the fuck is executive function? And therefore didn't do it. And I've only just noticed that. So there's an immediate example of how my inability to plan a future event, even though I have to set all this up because Alex is completely computer illiterate, has an impact on my life. There are obviously specific.
Hang on, James. I'm looking up at the title and you've written emotional dysfunction. Look up at the top.
Have I?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Look up there by the duck.
Yeah, by the duck. Other pod streaming websites are available. There are obviously specific executive functions that I have a well documented history, and we've talked about them in the past, and annoying issues with, particularly my working memory. We all know my kryptonite is making a cup of tea in one go, or drinking it, which I can't do. Planning, which I've just mentioned, is something I usually outsource to Mrs. ADHD, which, considering the fact that she's got ADHD and executive dysfunction, gives you an indication about how well planned our lives actually are. I've got issues with self-restraint, which is part of the inhibition part of executive dysfunction, and I've got massive, and we were just talking about this before we recorded, emotional self-regulation issues. I've struggled for, since Alex wore short trousers, like cut off jeans. Al, everyone cut off jeans, have you?
Today? Yeah.
Not today. Just a bit of an in-joke about a photograph I've been told about. I've had emotional self-regulation issues for a very, very long time, and I've got better at building things around me to make up for a lack of executive function, for a lack of those higher thinking skills. And that includes, technology. It includes something as simple as a calendar. It includes, and we've talked about this a lot, a totem. For anybody watching on YouTube, I've just got my totem out for everybody. But it's a constant battle, to not think I'm shit, which actually I'm not.
Aren't you though?
It was the pause that killed me then, Alex. It was the pause. Come on. I'm meant to have things at you. You're the victim, not me.
You are shit, but not because of those things.
That's very true.
It's entirely personality driven, your shitness. It's exactly right.
Yeah. So what are your reflections? How does executive dysfunction make your life what it is?
This is the one that has given me in the past the most self-loathing and shame and guilt, but doesn't anymore. I think the biggest distinction between used to hate myself for it and don't know so much about it. Learning about this, learning that there are things I can't do, even though I want to do them. And importantly, that old chestnut, emotional acceptance that ADHD is a disorder that I have that will be with me forever. And executive dysfunction to a certain level is part of that. This has been a big part of my, I call it peaceful wildness.
I'm not
definitely should
sorry,
be.
I'm not having it.
It's what I call it in my head.
Peaceful.
I'll never be
wildness.
peaceful, James, nor will you.
Is that the name of your string quartet?
I need to work out, get it written in Chinese characters, and like tattoo it onto my small of my back. No, it's awful. I know it's awful, but a lot of the aims of ADHD people, and often the aims of their coaches or whatever, is to give people peace that have ADHD, and it ain't gonna happen. You need to be peaceful within your existing mind, and that mind is typically a bit wilder than others. So, for want of a better expression, to learn acceptance for a peaceful wild mind is how I describe it. And now I want that tattoo. So, for example, the thought of an office job. Jesus Christ, I honestly don't know how people do that. If you're doing an office job and you have ADHD and you love it, tell us what the emotional reward of the day-to-day, what do you do? There's some exciting risks, or maybe you launder money through a computer, I don't know. But the thought of an office job for me is absolutely baffling. The executive functions needed to do that kind of thing without sort of an adrenaline-inducing situation is beyond me, because for exactly the same reasons as James, we have that same sort of mind to do the planning and the details without getting in the next hour or two a big old chunk of reward and stimulus. It's beyond me, so I don't put myself in that position. I accept that I am and always will be like that.
You're very good at that, though, aren't you? We've talked before about things like domestic anxiety, and we've talked personally offline when I've been in not a good place about my
when you suppress your number, and I don't realize it's you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've called off Sam's phone. You've often talked about how some of the things that cause me stress, you just don't. Why would you put yourself in that position? Which again, that kind of baffles me, because I think, well, yeah, but normal people go to parties, and then you would just say to me, but if it causes you stress, why would you do that? So you seem to have one ability. I don't know of any others, but you do have this one ability to say, if that is a problem for me, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, a lot of communication as well. Tom, who we had on the other week, was saying that one of the things that he's learned to do because of executive dysfunction is say, "I'm sorry, can you repeat that?" It was when he talked about, I was thinking about ducks. Do you remember? And it's the same thing. I say, "I'm sorry, I won't be coming to this party because my mind is wild and I can't." And
I hope you've sent that email. I've literally sent those words in a text or an email to somebody, and just got new phone, who dis back. Okay. Right, thank you for sharing that, Alex. Now, if I were reading the script that's been prepared, it would say this leads us awfully into our latest game of what's James lost or forgotten this week. So again, there's a little
script, James.
Bit of manipulation going in there, Alex, but it does lead us gloriously into this week's edition of what's James lost or forgotten this week. So I think your score is still 5. We don't know how many out of, or even if it is 5 because we've forgotten. But you're not doing well, Alex, are you? As usual, you've got 3 options. And again, I know I have to explain this because of your offensive thickness. There are 3 options, and one of them is something I actually forgot or lost. Okay? Are you on board? Right. Okay. Option 1 is I forgot how to roll a cigarette. Okay. Option 2 is that I forgot to take my wallet with me to Aldi. Other supermarkets are available, and therefore had to leave.
Not as good though, are they?
No, Aldi's amazing. Had to leave a trolley full of shopping there and do the walk of shame out. And option 3 is that I forgot to charge my car before having to travel to a very important appointment. It's an electric car, by the way. Sorry, because I'm
that was going to be my joke. I was going to say, well, I know you haven't got an electric car and you don't smoke, so. But then I know you don't ever get your fucking wallet out as well. So, those are good ones.
They're always good ones.
Charge your car. Roll a cigarette. See, I don't think you would forget how to roll a cigarette. I don't think that fits in with many of the common disorders of ADHD. It's certainly because it's a relatively long-term remembered skill.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that you did do that, but just because you're like pig shit thick and nothing to do with your But then the other two might be for the same reason. So the thing about Aldi is you could phone up your like massively long-suffering wife, and I can only assume deaf wife, and ask for the long number across the middle and the expiry date, and your mother's maiden name. Charge your car because you're pig shit thick.
You're going with the car. I mean, I am pig shit thick. That's been well established. But again, you're wrong, Alex. So congratulations for remaining on 5 points. I forgot how to roll a cigarette. So my lisdexamphetamine, which is a stimulant, and anybody that partied in the 90s knows that cigarettes go well with stimulants, means I smoke a bit more than I used to because it gives me a bit of peace. But fags
don't smoke though. It's dreadful.
Don't smoke.
Yeah.
It's terrible, and cigarettes are incredibly expensive. So to mitigate that cost, I've started rolling cigarettes with one of those little rolling machines, and I was doing fine. And it is a new learned skill, which is why it may be ADHD. But all of a sudden, every time I went to roll one, I would roll it the wrong way, and then open the machine up, and just tobacco and paper would spill out onto my lap. And this was like 15 cigarettes on the trot. And every time I would go, right, okay, I did it that way last time. So if I do it the other way, and it would still then all spill out. So I couldn't, for a period of time, roll a cigarette using a cigarette rolling machine.
I can't believe you actually smoke cigarettes. It's not the 90s. What the fuck's going on?
Because, and as you well know, my brain is very strange and wrong.
Yeah,
and there's lots going on. And I discovered actually last summer that I find the only time I ever get in a piece is sat outside, and it's shit in the winter, but sat outside having a cup of tea and a cigarette listening to music, which is why one of the questions to what's James forgotten recently was that I forgot to put the music on, which has happened at times. Cigarettes are terrible for you, but they do cause a small release of dopamine. And for me, particularly if I've got a busy day, that 5 minutes of peace in my head's fucking priceless. And I know that the payoff is that I'm damaging my body, and I know I want to change that behavior. But at the minute, yeah, I do smoke or try and smoke rollers when I can actually roll them.
Right. It's my mission to get you to change that to vapes. I know you don't like them as much, but I'm going to.
I've tried a vape and I've got a vape. It didn't really work, but anyway. As my coach, if you can help me with that, then it'll be the first thing you've helped me with. So that was the latest edition of What Has James Lost, Forgotten or Mislaid this week. That takes us nicely into the break, so I can go and have a pee. We'll be back with our top tips and maybe even a product recommendation. See you later. Welcome back to part 3 of episode 17 of the ADHD.UK podcast on executive function and what the fuck is that. This part of the podcast, we talk about our top tips. So Alex, fire away and give us something useful, because you know I'm not going to.
That's good. Learn about them. So executive function, just a quick reminder, are the higher order functions that humans do, or jellyfish if you're James. So, planning and time management and cognitive inhibition, stopping, thinking about things, learning about them. And we're going to help. That's what we do. That's what we're here for. We're breaking it down into different aspects, and we're going to bang on about them over the next few podcasts if we remember to do them. And learning about them is real power. Even the research-based evidence is that psychoeducation, self-education, or with an educational group or individual helps with managing your ADHD, preferably with medication if you can get it, but even on its own, it's good. And we're going to help you with that. We, as a community of people with ADHD, are not amazing at self-awareness. So maybe start with projects you did well in the past that felt fun, and that's quite crucial. Think about who you were working with in that project. What did you do? What did they do for you? Are there things you can do on your own even? And what can you do about memory issues if you have them? A dictaphone, some software to help you, or a notebook that I have, but literally a posh pen and paper. It's got a stormtrooper on it, and it was very expensive.
I've always got a dictaphone, Alex, because I've got your number.
Oh no, I
just
don't
waiting
like that
for that
joke.
to drop. I thought.
Yeah, no, I got it. I just don't. Yeah. No, I don't think, because it was an actual joke with a punchline and doesn't suit you. So, what about planning? I've got a client who uses project management software with like really clean linear actions of what they have to do for them to do. And I know that you don't like project management software, which, if we're all the same, they couldn't sell mixed biscuits, could they? So that's fine. But if it works for you, try it. So what has worked in the past? Learn what these functions are and learn who you are. And starting with the past is a great place. And then think, how can I make that my executive functions in the future, the things I can do or the things that can help me? Those are my tips, James. Have you got anything like clumsily to add?
Annoyingly, there's nothing I can criticize in that, which, as you know, is a source of deep frustration for me. I do. My top tips would be that if there are executive functions that you don't have, whether that's working memory, planning, etc., use what's available to take the role on for you. Use technology. It is one of the best examples to take some of the job on, to take the weight off your shoulders. So this is easier for some executive dysfunctions than it is for others. For example, if you've got problems with planning, then you can use a calendar. You can make sure that when you put something in that calendar, that you give yourself more time to do a task than you think it will take, because we're often time blind as well, and that means you're not going to end up causing yourself distress because you didn't plan it properly. If you've got problems with emotional self-regulation, when we talked about this all the time, learn or try to learn to accept that you sometimes are unable to control your emotions. And I'm going to get my totem out again, Al. Use a totem.
Have a look at your totem, James.
There's my totem for those on YouTube. Get your totem out. Have a mantra. It can be whatever works for you. For me, it's not me. It's my ADHD, and I just step out of time when I'm emotionally dysregulated and touch my totem and say, "It's not me. It's my ADHD."
I've never heard this phrase totem till I met you, apart from totem pole as well.
Yeah. So, pardon me. I'll give you an example of how this has actually helped. So I may have talked about this story before, but just before I was diagnosed, but when you were coaching me, I think from memory, we bought a new dishwasher, and it wasn't an impulse buy. The other one was fucked, but we bought a new dishwasher. And what I did do, which is a very ADHD thing, is I didn't read the installation instructions properly. Just so I can fit that, and I snapped the waste hose on it. And of course, then thought, well, you can get waste hoses. They're easy. Realized it was actually integrated into the whole of the machine. I'd have to take the back off, and I just thought, that's it. I've ruined it. They're not going to take that back. That's £400 spunked up the wall. And I went upstairs, and I'm not ashamed to say, had a little cry. I was in a mess for 3 or 4 hours because I broke the waste hose on a dishwasher. And when I eventually realized that actually I'm just going to email them and say it came like that, and they did collect it and replace it instantly, and it wasn't a problem. It was fine. Now I've since managed, through getting my totem out and touching it, that when I'm in that kind of situation, that I can more easily say, this is not an appropriate emotional response. This is not you. This is your ADHD. So I step out of time, I touch my totem, and I say to myself, it's not me, it's my ADHD. And that really helps me not self-chastise. What about you, Alex? Have you got any tips? Have we done your tips?
We have done my tips, but I also have a massive totem pole. I really want one. I don't have one. I guess that's. I do have. I never called it that though. It's just. It's just always been on my wrist. My thoughts are. I have an imagination of the key things in my life that I need to be okay for me to be happy. The health of my family and so on. And I often refer back to that to check that's okay, and that I'm not having, exactly like you, James, an inappropriate emotional reaction to elements that are part of my ADHD and frankly out of my control. And when I go back to that, the things that I've got all flustered about are slightly easy to handle. Remember, no one's got the answer to ADHD. Slightly easy to handle is good enough.
I mean, I blatantly stole it off you. The idea of toteming when you told me about this years ago, and I didn't know about your mental health history, and I just thought, why has he got that on his wrist?
A wristband, yeah.
I think it took like 12 years before you to actually tell me, and that's the point.
Yeah.
That leads us nicely into our product recommendation. The product recommendation this week is get a totem. Now, it doesn't have to be anything that's expensive or even cost anything at all. You can go get a charity wristband for a quid, and it's just something that you can touch. If you've got something that you've got, with the key thing is it's got to be with you all the time. So it could be a piece of jewelry, it could be a necklace, it could be a ring, it could be a bracelet, it could be in Alex's case a big hoop earring, but just something that you've got with you.
Or it could be a parrot on your shoulder, like me.
Exactly. Something you've got with you at all times, which you can touch and use as a mechanism to just pause, step out of time and say, this is an inappropriate emotional regulation, or it's okay that I forgot to do that thing, or I know I'm struggling to start a project, but it's okay, it's not me, it's my ADHD, or whatever mantra works for you. But using that totem as a way of recognizing your behavior and helping you accept it is potentially really powerful. So that's our product recommendation of the week. Get yourself a totem, or if you've already got one that you're wearing, use it as a totem. Alex, before we go, anything you'd like to add?
Just that I don't like it when you say sensible and useful things.
I don't like it when you say things. On that note, this was episode 17 of our podcast, and it was on executive dysfunction. As usual, if you want to get in touch, if you'd like to suggest any subjects for us to cover, if you've got any feedback about Alex's face, or if you just want to say hi in general, then get in touch on the socials at ADHD Adult UK, and we'll see you next time.
Bye all.